The call came in just after mid-morning. A welfare check. The kind that barely registers on the radio before the dispatcher moves onto the next call. No screams, no panic, no urgency in the voice on the other end of the line. Just concern. A relative said they hadn't heard from the homeowner in weeks. Calls unanswered. Messages unread. The house, according to neighbors, looked exactly the same as it always had. No lights, no movement, no signs of life. 2 officers were sent out. Standard procedure. They expected nothing more than a quiet knock, a quick walkthrough, maybe a note left behind. Another routine check, another forgettable address. The house sat on a calm residential street. Too calm. Lawns were trimmed, cars lined the driveways. Children's bikes rested where they'd been dropped without a second thought. It blended in perfectly. The kind of place your eyes slide past without stopping. Nothing about it suggested danger. Nothing hinted at what waited inside. The officers knocked. No answer. They knocked again, louder this time, announcing themselves, giving whoever was inside time to respond. Still nothing. They walked the perimeter. Windows were intact, curtains drawn. Then they noticed the front door, unlocked, not wide open, not damaged, just unlocked, enough to justify entry. They stepped inside slowly, voices echoing as they called out, "Police. Anyone home?" The interior was clean, unsettlingly clean. Furniture was neatly ranged, no signs of a struggle, no broken glass, no overturned chairs. A calendar hung in the wall. The last date circled nearly a month earlier. Time had stopped here. A pair of shoes sat by the door, placed carefully. Side by side, it didn't feel abandoned. It felt staged. The air was stale, thick, unmoving, like it hadn't been disturbed in weeks. The refrigerator hummed. A clock ticked somewhere down the hall. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. The officers moved methodically, room to room, closets dot bathrooms. The garage, no sign of the homeowner, no explanation for the silence. Then one of them noticed something that didn't fit. Something small, something easy to miss. In the living room stood a large bookshelf pressed against the far wall, filled with books, decorations, framed photos. Ordinary, but the dust told a different story. The floor beneath the shelf was cleaner than the surrounding area. Too clean. The wall behind it showed faint scrape marks, lines where something heavy had been moved. Again and again. One officer pressed against the shelf. The sound was wrong, hollow. Walls weren't supposed to sound like that. Bookshelves definitely weren't. They looked at each other. Training kicked in instinct. They pulled the shelf forward, and the room changed. Behind it was a door. No handle, no hinges, no frame. Just a flat panel, perfectly flush with the wall, painted to disappear. If the shelf had stayed in place, no one would ever have known it was there. The house felt smaller suddenly, closed in. This wasn't a storage space. This wasn't part of the original design. Someone had gone out of their way to hide this. Backup was called immediately. When more officers arrived, the house was documented, photographed, sealed. Then the door was opened. The smell came first. Stale, heavy, metallic, sour. The kind of smell that doesn't belong in a normal home. Inside was a small room. No windows, no ventilation. Bare walls that swallowed light. A single chair sat in the center, bolted directly into the floor. Against one wall were shelves, boxes, notebooks, electronic equipment, old monitors, recording devices, wires running where no one would ever see them. This wasn't a panic room. This wasn't a safe place. This was a room built for control. Flashlights moved slowly across the shelves. Some boxes were labeled with dates, others with names the officers didn't recognize. Not yet. One notebook lay open on a small table. The handwriting was neat, careful, methodical. No emotion, no hesitation, just lists, schedules, times. Observations, not of things, of people, physical descriptions, habits, daily routines. Notes like, arrived alone, no phone, unlikely to be missed immediately. The room felt colder. This wasn't paranoia. This was preparation. More boxes were open. Inside were personal items, jewelry, wallets, identification cards, phones. Some were old, years old. Others looked recent, too recent. None of them belonged to the homeowner. Each item was proof. Someone had been here, then another, and none of them had left with their belongings. The house was locked down as a crime scene. Detectives arrived, then forensic teams. As evidence was cataloged, the scale of the discovery became impossible to ignore. The names in the notebooks were run through missing persons databases. At first, nothing. Then one match. Then another. Then several more. People reported missing over nearly a decade. Different ages, different backgrounds, different lives. But the same ending. They vanished. No witnesses, no leads, no answers. Until now, forensics confirmed DNA from multiple individuals. The chair showed signs of repeated use. The equipment had been operated regularly. This wasn't impulsive. This was routine. Neighbors were interviewed. They described the homeowner as quiet, polite, forgettable, someone who waved, someone who smiled, someone who never caused problems. No one remembered visitors. No strange noises. No complaints. That was the most disturbing part. This had all happened without anyone noticing. Records showed a stable job. No criminal history. No red flags. Bills paid on time. Taxes filed. A life that looked harmless on paper. But behind the wall, something else existed. Old hard drives were recovered. Surveillance footage. Grainy. Poor quality. But clear enough. People entering the house. Some willingly. Some confused. Some visibly uneasy. None were ever seen leaving. The footage cut out at key moments. Files missing. Sections erased. Intentionally. The hidden room wasn't just a place to observe. It was a place to keep people. When the story broke, families came forward. They recognized items. A bracelet, a wallet, a ring, things they had been holding on to hope for. Now they had answers. And the answers hurt more than the silence ever had. The homeowner was found just states away, living quietly, like nothing had happened. They were arrested without resistance. No struggle, no panic. When questioned, they spoke only once. One sentence. You weren't supposed to find that room. The trial revealed some truths, but not all. Some victims were never identified. Some names led nowhere. Some people were never reported missing at all, which raised the darkest question. How many disappeared without anyone noticing? The house was eventually torn down. The hidden room destroyed, but the damage remained. Cold cases reopened. New connections made. One secret room shattered years of silence, and it proved something terrifying. The most dangerous secrets aren't buried underground. They're hidden in plain sight, behind a bookshelf, in a quiet house, on a normal street, where no one ever thought to look, and where no one ever thought to ask what was happening just beyond the wall. The arrest didn't bring closure. That was the first thing investigators realized, because once the suspect was in custody, the questions only multiplied. In interrogation, the homeowner didn't rant, didn't plead, didn't deny. They sat still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. When detectives asked about the hidden room, there was no visible reaction, as if the room had never existed at all. They were shown photographs, the chair, the notebooks, the belongings. Nothing, no emotion, no explanation, only silence. Investigators soon understood something unsettling. This person hadn't built the room out of impulse or desperation. It had been planned, refined, improved over time. The notebooks revealed revisions, crossed out methods. Updated routines, mistakes corrected. The earliest entries were sloppy, uncertain. Later entries were precise, cold. The room hadn't been discovered by accident. It had been perfected. And the longer detectives studied the evidence, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about control. It was about invisibility. The suspect didn't want attention, didn't want notoriety. They wanted to operate in a space where no one ever looked. Behind normalcy, behind routine, behind trust. Financial records added another layer. Small, unremarkable transactions. Cash withdrawals spread out over years. Purchases that raised no alarms on their own. Soundproofing materials. Recording equipment bought secondhand. Locks purchased under different names. Nothing flashy. Nothing traceable. Every decision was made to blend in, to disappear. Digital forensic teams recovered deleted files from the hard drives. Fragments of video. Corrupted audio. Partial logs. Enough to confirm what investigators feared. The room had been used far more often than the notebook suggested. Some entries were missing entirely. Pages torn out, files wiped clean, which meant the suspect had been curating their own history, deciding what could be found and what could never be known. As word spread, missing persons units from other jurisdictions contacted investigators. Cases once dismissed as runaways, voluntary disappearances, unconfirmed sightings. Patterns began to emerge. Transportation routes, meeting locations, common points of contact. The suspect hadn't hunted randomly. They selected people who existed on the edges. People between places, between jobs, between relationships, people whose absence wouldn't immediately set off alarms. That realization hit hardest. Some victims hadn't been reported missing for months. Some, never, because no one realized they were gone. Investigators returned to the house again and again. Even after the hidden room was cataloged, they measured walls, floors, ceilings, looking for more. And eventually, they found it, a second anomaly, subtle, almost invisible, behind the laundry room. Another hollow sound, another false wall. This space was smaller, cruder, older. The original room, before the upgrades, before the refinements. Inside were earlier tools, cruder restraints, different materials. This was where it had started. The evolution of the room told its own story. Trial preparation took months. Prosecutors faced a problem. How do you explain something so calculated to a jury? How do you make them understand a crime designed not to be seen? They focused on the human cost. Families testified. Some had waited years. Some had waited in silence. They spoke about unanswered phones, about birthdays missed, about hope slowly eroding. One mother described keeping her child's room exactly the same for a decade. Another family admitted they had stopped searching years ago because it hurt too much. The evidence was overwhelming, but the suspect remained detached. They listened to testimony without looking up. When victims' belongings were shown, they didn't react, as if those items were just objects, not lives, not people. Psychological evaluations revealed no clear motive that satisfied anyone. No trauma, no obvious trigger, just a pattern of control and secrecy. Experts testified that some crimes aren't driven by anger, or revenge, or desperation. Some are driven by opportunity and patience. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty, multiple counts, life sentences. But even then, there was no sense of relief, because investigators knew something the jury didn't. There were still names in the notebooks with no matches, still gaps in the footage, still victims who had never been identified, still people who may never be known. The house was eventually demolished. Neighbors watched as the walls came down. Many said they couldn't sleep afterward, knowing what had been happening so close to them. For so long, the empty lot left behind felt worse than the house ever had. Too quiet, too exposed. Cold case units across the country continued reviewing files. Some disappearances were finally explained, others remained unsolved, and some families would never get answers at all. Years later, the story still circulates among law enforcement as a warning, not about monsters in dark alleys, but about how danger can wear normalcy like a disguise, how evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it files taxes, sometimes it waves to neighbors, sometimes it builds a life so ordinary that no one questions it, until someone opens the wrong door, moves the wrong shelf, and sees what was never meant to be seen. Because the truth is this: the hidden room wasn't the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was how easily it stayed hidden. For years, in a quiet neighborhood, on a normal street, where everyone assumed nothing bad could possibly be happening just beyond the wall, but silence might be hiding.